Hello, and welcome to the MentorDINO podcast. I'm your host, Katelyn Rossier. I am an architect and founder of MentorDINO. Join me each week as I speak with amazing professionals in and around the architecture, engineering, and construction industry, as we are all part of a larger interconnected community. We discuss everything from career stories, lessons learned, and advice for others finding their own unique career path. Thank you to all of our current subscribers, and if you're new, welcome to the conversation. And if you like this episode, please do me a favor by hitting subscribe, like, or share it with a friend. It really helps others be able to discover this resource and support them on their own unique career journey. Welcome back to the MentorDINO podcast. This week, I'm going to talk about being a female in a male-dominant industry like construction. And this one, I pretty much touched with a lot of females on the podcast, but there's a small handful I want to pull out for this episode that really hit the nail on the head from multiple directions. And I know I've had my struggles early in my career being a female on a job site, that now I try to advocate for those that need to stick up for themselves along the way and what challenges we may face as females in a dominated industry. So these ones are going to be fun. So first off, I have Mendy Freeland. She is an architect, owns her own architecture firm out in California. She was episode number 18, and she talked about how starting to be a parent was how her step was to opening up her own office. She was the first female-owned architecture firm in her area because everywhere else was men, and really what that meant and how motherhood and parenthood in the industry, especially when she had her kids, wasn't as welcoming and friendly. So hopefully this sheds some light on what it was like to be a parent and a mother in the industry when now your kids are more in the high school, college range, which is very different and has definitely paved the way for new moms like myself and making sure that we have a little bit of a different experience being a mom and a career professional in the AEC industry. So hopefully you guys enjoy this episode from Mendy. And again, her full episode was number 18.
And in that, the standard practice in California, which is not like state regulated or anything like that, it's just a common practice, is that the new construction projects are a particular percentage, and then modernizations or alterations are a percentage higher than what the new construction is. So several years ago, they stopped using it, but several years ago, the state of California published a table of if the construction estimate is within this dollar range and this dollar range, then your percentage, your fee is this. So they sort of dictated it before, but then they stopped dictating it and they let firms do their own fee. So part of the qualification is that you provide that, how you determine your fee. But pretty much you just provide, they tell you what work they want you to do, and then you provide a proposal and then they accept it, or they negotiate if they want.
Yeah, I was more curious with it's always a conversation of when you're going after projects and firms just lowballing each other to get the work, or there's not as much in their pipeline, so they just need to win the project to keep their staff employed and not worried about profit because architects are so bad with money. And then you wonder why contractors can make so much more and their profit margins are so much different. So I was curious if them setting it helped with that, at least in terms of us lowballing ourselves, but if that was delegated and saying, here's what your fee is, and it's still really low.
It's kind of it's the unspoken rule. So we all know what the fee is. And so we all base we don't want to go lower than that because pretty much that's the rule, right?
Yeah.
So we go by it. So and it does pay better, but public projects tend to pay better anyway. So in California, I'm not sure how it is in other states, but California public projects have to pay like the labor for the contractors at a prevailing wage, which is definitely higher than what the standard wages for laborers. So we want to make sure that the job is done well, not necessarily cheap.
Yeah, exactly. And so are you by yourself in your firm? How many people do you have?
So I am by myself, but I hire 1099 contractors to assist me when my workload is heavy. And the ones that I've hired so far are also licensed architects from other states, which is really beneficial to me. I started doing this a few years ago during the pandemic when several people that I knew in my network were laid off, newly licensed, but also laid off. And so they decided to go out on their own. And in going out on their own, getting their own business started, maybe they weren't taught how to run a business, how to do the financial stuff, how to plan for things, all of the state regulations that you have to do as a business owner, different than, just getting your license. It's a completely different world being a business owner.
Mm-hmm.
So we agreed to work together. They would provide production work for me, and I could teach them how to run their business. It wasn't like they didn't pay me or anything to mentor them. It was just a mentorship kind of
Yeah.
situation. But so it worked out really well, and then I was able to give them some steady income while they got on their feet. But the state of California also has a rule about hiring people to not be construed or misinterpreted as employees.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of rules to follow. Some other states also do that too, but they you can't you have to follow all of these guidelines so that they wouldn't be interpreted as an employee. So they have to work for other people. They have to have their own business. You can't pay for their computer, their software, anything like that. It has
Interesting.
to work like a consultant.
Okay. And then how do you find 1099 professionals, or how are 10 people looking to be a 1099 find people that will hire them?
So that's networking. So our industry is really word of mouth, and it's really who you know, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, the way that I found them was being a part of a few online communities on Facebook. One of them was Young Architect with Michael Rosica. So he's got a great amount of people who participated in his ARE boot camp and attended his Young Architect conferences.
Mm-hmm.
So I met them through there. That's one of them I hired through meeting her through him. And then a few others I met on Entree Architects on Facebook, on the Entree Architect community. And that is a community for entrepreneur architects. So it's just kind of we're all in this together. We're all here to help each
Yep.
other and to teach each other kind of community. So it's just kind of putting it out there that, hey, this is what I do with my business. And if anyone's interested, I could use a little help. One of the people that I hired came at a really great time for me. I broke my leg 2 years ago
Oh
pretty
no.
badly. And I hired her, and she took care of my production work while I recovered from breaking my leg. And it was a really, really awful break.
Ugh.
I broke my femur when I was wakeboarding, and it twisted the bone and it snapped
Ugh.
and it was just a mess, and it took a long time to recover. But I was actually grateful that I kind of had this set up for her to step in and help me with that. So I think it's fantastic, and I like working in this method. And being a new firm owner, or just kind of a smaller firm owner, it's really hard to take that step into hiring employees and
Mm-hmm.
it's hard. So as a business owner, it's hard to make sure that you have consistent money coming in. And then because it's just in this industry, it's just really not consistent. It's inconsistent. Though getting the projects is inconsistent, and getting the money in for the projects are inconsistent. You have to really have a good system and good clients to make it consistent. So that to me is a little scary hiring staff, because that means I have to make sure that I have that consistency down. And so when I'm ready to take that step, it'll be when I'm at that consistency level.
Yeah. Because it can be you're stressed now and you need help now, but you may not need help in 6 months.
Yeah.
And that'd be really hard. I would find it really hard to bring somebody on and then have to let them go, but you're
Yeah.
trying to build. So,
Yeah.
what's the best advice you've given the professional that's starting on their own and doing 1099 for you?
Um, let's see. Well, one of the questions that comes up that isn't taught while you're working as an employee in firms is how to get the work. Like, no one ever teaches you how to get the work, because that's the secret sauce of the firm
Mm-hmm.
owners, right? That's their magic. That's how they do it. And sometimes maybe more traditionally minded firm owners are not open to teaching their younger staff how to do that. So that's one of the first things that I talk about is you need to understand the market. And this comes also with the work that I did in communications and public relations, but understand the audience and look at it that way. How are they getting their information? So look at your potential clients. How do they get their information? How do they find you or other architects? What are their biggest obstacles or hurdles or challenges in reaching out to you? Make it easy for them to say yes. So one of my biggest things that I tell kind of everybody is, whatever you're doing, if you need, make it easy for them to say yes, to hire you. So relieve their stress, relieve their, if they are scared to talk to architects, make the phone call. It took a lot of courage for them to reach out to you. Do the courtesy of answering the call and
Mm-hmm.
making them feel more comfortable, because I just, in my own experience, I think that the architects that I worked for were kind of not the most friendly when it came to cold calls or people, calling out of the blue looking for someone to help them.
Welcome back. And this time, I want to dive directly into the construction side and what it's like to be on the contractor side as a female in the profession. And I want to introduce you to Barb Allen. She was episode number 57 for me and started out as a superintendent and saw what it's like to be boots on the ground, getting things done, what it's like to be a superintendent. And then she's even pivoted to being in the office side, and so more running a construction company, and then has launched her own business now, having to advocate for professionals and really trying to help teach the contractor side the real challenges of being a male and female in the construction industry. So, hope you guys enjoy this clip from Barb. And again, her episode is number 57. Sticking a little bit longer with your early part of the career, was there any challenge that you faced that was almost a point of quitting? Because things can get kind of challenging. I know you said you fought through different challenges, but was
Yeah.
there anything that was particularly?
Well, for me it was I don't remember ever hitting anything that made me feel like I'm done. I am leaving this job. Um Now that I say that, I'm thinking about a time that I actually did leave. I okay, I'll give you this one. So, yeah, I had an owner that was I was a superintendent. This was in Houston. I had an owner's rep who was awful. I mean, awful. And I was standing up for myself, and I had a boss who wasn't. He was more of the, hey, this is what the owner wants. This is what we do. He was kind of old school, right? Like, where no, he needs us to work 12 hours a day. No, that's not our contract. That's not what we're doing. And I had finally had enough. And I called in one morning and I said, hey, I'm not coming in today. And my boss said, okay, you're not telling me anymore. And I said, I also don't know if I'm coming in tomorrow or if I'm coming back at all. I said, I need some time to process everything that's going on and see if there's a path forward, because I'm not going to continue doing this. And I literally put in my headphones and took my dog and walked for hours that day, just thinking and thinking and thinking. And my boss kept texting me, are you okay? Are you sure you're okay? And finally, the next day, I called him and said, we need to have a chat. I'll tell you what needs to go on. But ultimately, I didn't feel supported. I needed someone above me to feel like they had my back. And at that time, I did not feel that. And the funny thing is that I went in, and when he and I had this conversation, it was actually in person. And I gave him 2 weeks to give him 2 weeks. I said, I'm going to give you 2 weeks. If this isn't fixed in 2 weeks, I'm going to actually give you my 2 weeks to quit. So that was what I did. And within a few days, things had changed. But I just had taken all that I could take. And there is something different when you look like someone like me on site. It's so easy for someone to think you can be a pushover. And if someone above you doesn't also stand up for you, you get labeled. You, the female, gets labeled as the difficult one because the boss keeps rolling over. And I just wasn't going to do it anymore.
Yeah. But I think that's good advice that you just took a break, stepped away, but then advocated for yourself at the same time. Because I think a lot of people would just put their heads down and taken it, or just quit and wait till it's fiery.
Yeah, and I think too many people, especially in our industry, it may be more male than female, but I think they get all upset and they get on fire and they quit. And I don't think you have to make sure you've really given someone a chance to fix what's going wrong. And I think communication is not one of the things that we do best in this industry. And if you haven't really told someone what they need to fix, you're just expecting them to know, or you're expecting them to know you wanted a promotion, or expecting them to know you wanted a raise, and you don't get it and you quit. Like, that's not fair. You need to make sure that your intentions or your needs are known, give them a chance to fix it. And if they don't, you don't ever have to look back and think, I wish I could have done more, because you did. You laid it all on the line and they didn't step up.
I've seen it from all directions that I'm like, we could do all these presentations to the owner. What's not taking the latest one and presenting it to everybody beyond
I
just
love that.
the CDs?
That's a great idea. I'm also a big proponent of design assist. I love when we can get the MEP subs in early, because just like you said, they need to understand your actual intent. But as architects and engineers, pricing isn't your thing. Sorry, but no matter how good architects and engineers think they're giving a budget to an owner, I have yet to see one that I was like, oh yeah, this is probably right. Sorry, that's not your lane, right?
Nope.
Like, you're really good at designing. Let the people price who price. But if you can bring those subs in early enough to say, hey, here's what I'm wanting to do. What do you think would be the most cost-effective option? And are they looking for it on the front end, or are they looking for that cost effectiveness on the back end? So everyone's got to be in that conversation. But man, it changes so much about how the construction of the project goes. And it starts the collaboration early instead of forcing collaboration once the drawings are done and the subs have won the job with the way they put the bed together.
Yeah, because then everything gets more pricey then. Every little change and adjustment, if you can make it during the design, it's a lot simpler. Or making sure we've checked all the boxes so when they're bidding it, it actually makes sense.
Yes.
Because I've got an electrical manufacturer that sits across the hall from me. So I see a great number of drawings come in from architects and engineers that he loves telling me when stuff is not communicated properly or the information's not there, and they just have to take a shot at the dark on trying to bid it. And it's like, oh, well, I wish they brought somebody on early to make sure they crossed all their T's and dotted their I's before it got to you.
Yeah.
Type scenario. So, but I wanted to shift a little bit off construction site and shift over to what you're doing now, because now you've pivoted more into a career in educating and advocating for women in construction. So what inspired you to make that pivot?
Yeah, conversations. The last company I worked for, I just found myself having so many conversations that were rooted in unconscious bias. And I realized I've been having these same conversations for 25 years. Why had nothing changed? I had found a way to become successful. I had made it to the top, and I had thought it was going to get easier. Like, I thought, you just push through all this and you get to the top and you'll be fine. And when I got to the top, I found it was actually harder. And there was one day in particular, I I got called into a conference room where the vice president and the HR director were sitting. And that's never a good moment, right? And they said, so there have been some complaints that you're difficult to work with and you're difficult to work for, and we'd like to get you a coach. And I said, okay, great. I love a coach, but I'm going to need to know what difficult means, right? Like I can't just go to a coach and say, hey, can you make me more difficult? She's going to say, in what way? And their response to my question was, well, no one could actually articulate it. It's just kind of a feeling. And I said, okay, let me explain to you that I have been dealing with this my entire career. I am 5'5". I weigh 125 pounds. I am not the person anyone expects to talk to them the same way that my 6'4" white male partner talks to them. And so when he says what he says, he's effective. When I say what I say, I'm difficult. And all of a sudden, the HR manager says, this is beginning to sound a lot like unconscious bias. And I'm like, and the vice president said, what's that? Mm-hmm. And all of a sudden I thought, oh my gosh. I mean, this guy's basically my age. How does he not? He's never even heard of it. He doesn't know what unconscious bias is. This is why the industry isn't changing. This is why things aren't getting better, because we're not educating on these challenges and what unconscious bias is. Now, granted, 25 years ago, we didn't call it unconscious bias. We just called it crap, right?
Yeah.
But that's when I decided, like, I left that meeting and I did a lot of thinking. And several months later, I said, hey, I'm giving my notice. I'm going to go out and start a business that tries to make a difference for women in this industry. So that's how it all started.
Welcome back. And we talked about the superintendent level. So diving even deeper on the construction side, I want to dive into the trades. And Brenna Moore, episode number 30, has been a fantastic guest. And I've even got to operate some heavy equipment whenever traveling on vacation and meeting her in person. So she is a heavy equipment operator out in Seattle. And we talk anything from starting a family with being in the trades to, diving heads first into the trades, backing off to start her family, and then jumping right back in. But then she's such a big advocate for females getting into the trades and trying to help the profession from that standpoint and working with the Build Her program and what she does from a trades perspective. So hopefully you guys enjoy this clip from Brenna's episode. And if you want to learn more, her episode is number 30. You also mentioned working union and non-union. I know from my side, I only ever really document if it has to be union labor or not in terms of the contractor and who they can work with on the job site. From your perspective, how is the differences on your side, and what does that mean to you?
I feel like union, they have the best benefits, they have the best financial stability, they have the most work, but also it is very big companies that are in the union, and non-union is typically the smaller outfits. And the thing that I did really value about working non-union was it was that family setting. You did the Christmas dinners together. If your kids are sick, they're like, no, go. Whereas like the bigger companies, you are kind of in this mix of everybody. But I have noticed that has been changing, especially at the Walsh Group. That's the first place that I felt like I am more than just a number. So they do a really good job in making you feel like you are a part of a team, and that if they were to lose you, it would be a loss. Not, oh, we'll just call the hall and get somebody else.
Yeah.
Because that's been the mentality for a long time is, oh, there's more where that came from. But it's nice to feel valued somewhere that could do that because they are such a big company.
Yeah. Now, do the big companies, like, I'm trying to think of if I were looking for a job as a heavy equipment operator, am I going and getting a job from my local union, or am I getting hired by that big contracting company? Like, who's hiring you, or are you more of a um, solo professional that, hey, I can do these and grab whatever jobs as they come available? How's that work?
So there is a union list where, like, if you get laid off, you can call the hall, you say I'm out of work, and it's called the out of work list. And then it gives you a number of where you fall on that list for how many operators are in front of you.
Okay.
But as a journeyman, you can still solicit your own work. For example, I was at Northwest Construction, and then my superintendent from when I was 19, one of the ones that really took me under his wing and got me through all the tough days when I first started, he texted me one day and he said, I need you at Walsh. I need your help. And so I put in my 2 weeks at Northwest and I started at Walsh the following Tuesday.
Okay.
So you can still treat it as if you're putting in your 2 weeks and getting hired somewhere else. But there is always that out of work list to fall on where you will automatically be sent out to a new job, even if you don't have a contact.
Gotcha. So what types of projects are you currently working on?
Right now, I'm actually doing the Mercer Island Conveyance Project.
So what's that one?
So that is running HDPE through Lake Washington. It's high density pipe.
Okay. Because you can really do anything, because you could do any of the utility work. You could help with roadway and bridges. Yep. You could help with actual building construction.
Yep.
Like, that's diversity I didn't really think about in terms of, like, I'm an architect. I don't do bridges. I don't really do utility upgrades. Like, I'm kind of stuck in the built buildings environment.
Yeah.
Or could branch out to urban design, but it's kind of in this little pigeonhole.
Well, and that's what's cool is, I mean, obviously every project is essentially the same for that project, but it's still something new every day. I mean, one day you're digging to put in new water line, the next day you're grading out a trail, the day after that you may be loading trucks all day. It's just every day is different. So I think it really helps with that feeling of just being stagnant in your career. And you're constantly learning. Like, I've been in 11 years and I'll still learn a cool new trick and be like, why did it take me this long to know that? Because that's why a lot of times, even if I know what I'm doing, even if I know exactly how I've done it and it's worked, I will still listen to somebody who wants to explain it thinking that I don't know, because they may have a better way. And that will improve, and you can build off of what you already do know.
Yeah. So besides doing different types of projects and using equipment, what other kind of growth development options do you have at this point in your career?
So at this point, I have been leading the import and export side of the project. Then you can do foremanship, superintendent, or also, if I wanted to take classes, I could venture into more of the project management. But having all the field experience would greatly help that, because project managers, they went to school, they know their stuff, and everything looks great on paper. But I know what it's like to get 20 feet down and it's just not what's supposed to be there. So having that other perspective to go along with the technicalities of everything, I feel like would be really beneficial.
Yeah. When I talked to one of my friends that he was more of a project manager, now a director of construction, he kind of explained there's kind of two paths, like kind of that superintendent path and then kind of that PM path that you can take. But when talking to him, it didn't sound like you couldn't crisscross. And that seems the same. Like, you could still, even with all your in-field experience, you could still pivot later into a PM or go into a super.
Yeah, the biggest difference, I think, between a project manager and a superintendent is the superintendent still kind of has his boots on the ground with the crew, and then a project manager is more keeping everything in line structurally and making sure that also they're a huge support to the superintendent. So
Yeah.
both of them, a lot of responsibility. Just I think one is a little more office, and one is more out in the field still.
Yeah. I always lean on my supers, especially if you weren't expecting something to be somewhere or if we have to make a change. I always like talking to the people that are in the field and just see how would you do it? Because I'm
Yeah.
more that in the office, I can draw something. And I've learned a lot by, hey, you can draw something in 2D, but it's not what it's going to look like in 3D when you actually see it all come together. So it's really everybody in the field that I try to learn from more than the architects at this point. I'm like, how would you do it so I can do it better? But looking at the kind of two kind of discussion points, being a female in the trades, are there a lot of females doing the heavy equipment operating side? Or have you seen that growth change over the last 11 years?
I think it has. I've seen a lot more women get into the laborers union. Like currently, there's multiple women on my project, but I am the only female heavy equipment operator on the project.
Mm-hmm.
But I have seen a lot more women getting involved because it is a great living. It is a great way to support yourself and your family. And it's, again, no student loans. You're not stuck in an office all day. I personally thrive in the fresh air, whether it's pouring down rain or sunny out. When it hits about 100 degrees, I get a little grumpy, but
Yeah, it gets hot in there. Now, how was it when you had your daughter, right? So you took some time off. Have you found you had to do that then? Have you noticed any changes for moms in construction?
so I had my daughter, and then after she was 6 months old and I was ready to go back to work, then COVID-19 hit, and then there was no daycares open. Obviously, there was the shutdowns. And then when I did go back about 2 years later, I was honestly afraid. Like, I hadn't been in a piece of gear for a couple years, and I just felt like I wasn't going to perform.
Mm-hmm.
At least not at the level that you actually need to be a union heavy equipment operator. So as a union heavy equipment operator, you actually aren't supposed to run heavy equipment for non-union companies. However, you can be a laborer or a pipe layer. So I got back into construction, got my foot back in by being a laborer and pipe layer again. And then after about a year of doing that, then I was looking around. I'm like, I can do this. I can do this again.
Mm-hmm.
And then that's when I put my name on the list and I was ready to go again.
And just build that confidence back up.
Yeah, it was just, I just had to get back out there, get the dirt on my boots. I had to smell the burning diesel. I just had to get back in that just, I can't even explain to you what that area feels like. But once you're out of it for a while and you get back into it, you're like, oh, this is home. I miss this.
This is what it was.
Yeah.
And there's been a lot of discussion with kind of the numbers within the seasoned trade professionals, and we're going to be hitting a point where so many are retiring by 2030. What do you think, from your perspective, is happening within the construction industry and the trades? And what do you think are some steps we could do to start trying to improve that before everybody retires?
I think flat out the industry is going to have to evolve because people are evolving. You can break it down back to parenting. People are parenting their children differently. So
Mm-hmm.
they don't want to go to work and be miserable. And I know when I got into construction, I was loyal out of fear. Like I was loyal out of, am I not good enough? I need to work harder than this person. Oh, they didn't say I was doing a good job. I need to work even harder. And it just makes for a miserable morale for yourself. And nobody wants to do that anymore. They just don't.
Mm-hmm.
So I have an apprentice laborer that works with me every day. And for example, he didn't care. He had no work ethic. He was late all the time. And so when he wasn't changing, no matter what route I took from what I was essentially accustomed to or believed was the traditional construction way,
Mm-hmm.
I took a step back. It's like, what can I change to cause a change within himself and be better? So I started doing basically almost what I do with my daughter: give praise when deserved and give direction when needed. And it was a complete 180. He shows up 10 minutes early every day now. I have to tell him to slow down sometimes because he's just bouncing off the project walls, and he's just always making sure that what needs to be done is done, and checks in with me to see if I need anything extra. If he can tell it's a super busy day and I'm just going a million miles at once, what can I do to help you? How can I do this? How can I do that? And a lot of people on the job site are like, how did you do that? I said, I just changed my approach with him.
Mm-hmm.
And there's this stereotype that construction, it's just that hardcore breed. And it is. It does take a special individual to be out there. But at the same time, if you want the industry to keep growing, we have to want to teach the younger generations instead of just, like I said, my first foreman put me in the excavator, said, don't kill yourself, I'll be back later. That's really intimidating to young adults.
Yeah.
So, and if they're afraid of what they're doing, they're not going to grow. They're not going to be excited about it. You have to get people excited to learn. And that's the best way that we can go about anything with getting kids to want to go in the trades, like with that Build Her program that I do. All of them, every single one of them, looked terrified when they walked with me into the excavator to play the basketball dunk game where I taught them how to run it.
Yeah.
But all of them were just terrified. And then I got them in the seat, talked to them a little bit, showed them how to do it, and was just really positive. I'm like, you got this. You can do this. And every single one of them did it. And they were so excited afterwards, and the confidence, even the self-confidence they had walking away from that excavator was freaking amazing. Like, I don't know who needed that more, me or them, because just seeing how all of them transformed in that little amount of time, it was amazing. And I think that's when I really changed my outlook on how we should be bringing the new generation up.
Yeah.
Times are changing, and it's just like in a storm. Like, the big stubborn trees are gonna fall, they're gonna break because they won't bend. But you have the flexible ones, they'll bend in the winds of change, and they'll survive the storm and keep growing. So
Yeah, that's a great analogy, because
thank you.
I know, I mean, we don't have an engineer on the call, but the AEC industry in general, like, it is hard. It is demanding because we do have to meet deadlines. There's different risks associated with different tasks or things we're trying to do. And sometimes, yeah, people can get heated. Like, we get all worried whenever product delays happen. But there's nothing you can do about it. There's a lot of times just factors happen. Like, if a giant storm comes through, I'm sure you can't do the job you were expecting to do that day, but you can't control the weather, and neither can the client or the owner, and you just have to be able to pivot and stop worrying about it. But I remember when I started my career, I was very afraid of messing up anything, and that's just on the drawing side, and I'm not actually building something actively. And it was, okay, I can't mess up, I got to do this right. And those professionals that were just so downgrading to how bad you were doing was super detrimental to any growth I was doing. And if I asked for help, you couldn't get the support. But the second you got professionals that were able to support you when you needed it, could give you a long leash, pull you back in if you're going a wrong direction, and just walk you through some steps. But even being on site, like the superintendents I have worked with that have just been a lot more welcoming. Some of the first sites I was on, I was the only female on site. I was the only female in the trailer. People wouldn't give me the time of day on site. They'd be like, oh, what do you know? You're just some little girl type scenario. But the professionals that were like, yeah, okay, what do you want? What do you need? Let's get this together, and could get over the either age issue to what do you know, or the I am a female in the profession, like just go do paperwork and go get me a coffee. I'm like, no, you need to listen to me. I'm the architect. And so it's all those dynamics that I think the older generation leaving probably isn't a bad thing, but apologies to any of my senior professionals that I do really love working with. But it's that next generation of how can we pivot and change how the industry goes.
Yeah, and that's the thing is, like I said, when you are brought up through the industry, led out of fear, and you're trying to grow out of fear, you're essentially still trapped in this little shell, right? Like, you're afraid to speak up. You think that you may know a way to improve the system of what's going on, but you don't want to say anything, right? Because they know best. They've been doing this longer. They're older.
Yeah.
They think you're just a girl. Well, I felt like that my entire career. And then, like I said, I went to the Walsh group and I got sent to, like I said, the import export side. And the first couple weeks, I mean, things functioned. It was fine. And then so I think there was a lot of don't fix it if it's not broke.
Mm-hmm.
But it just essentially wasn't working for me. I was like, there's so many things we could do to improve safety, to improve production numbers, to improve the flow of how fast these trucks get in and out. And it's a very tight space, and trucks they were everywhere. And I was like, no, I need structure, because structure is smooth and smooth is fast, and fast is bigger production numbers, and also still safe. So finally, my superintendent said, it's your yard, do what you want. And I just broke out of this shell, and I was like, I want this, I want this, I want this, and I need this changed, and I need that changed. And he looked at me, and he's like, you've really been thinking about this. I was like, I've been thinking about this every day. I just haven't said anything. And then he said, why? I said, because you guys already have your way. And he said, but nobody's brought something to the table like this. So we implemented everything. And next thing you know, the senior superintendent comes down. I thought I was in trouble. And he goes, so you changed a lot of things down here. I said, yeah. And I'm just shaking in my boots. And he goes, I just wanted to come down and let you know that you broke all the trucking records for this project. We have never hauled this much material in and out till you got here.
That's awesome.
So, yeah, it's just, I finally found a place that just let me spread my wings and do my thing. And it's been really positive. And so my yard feeds all the zones because the project has different zones and different crews. I'm like the heart of that.
Mm-hmm.
So if I don't get trucks in and out, they're not getting their 5/8. They're not getting the dirt brought to me. So if I stall, the whole project stalls.
Yeah.
We can't have that. So
no.
I think it's giving people that space to open up and bring their ideas out and not be criticized for it.
Mm-hmm.
Even if it is just, that's a really good idea, you're on the right track, but we're going to continue to do it this way because of A, B, C, D, and maybe safety.
Yeah.
But we can work towards that maybe in just another angle. Because so many people are told, well, let's do this way. And like, oh, no, we don't do it that way. Oh, no, we've been doing it this way for years.
But then you
just get tired. And then you just get tired of speaking up. Or, oh, no, you belong in the kitchen.
Mm-hmm.
So, it's just, I think a lot of the bigger companies, like the Walshes, they want more women because they're seeing the effect that it has. Like we're really good at boosting morale. The whole job site could be burning down, and we will find one way or another to make everybody smile again, right?
Yeah.
And high stress is a huge safety hazard. Because if you're super stressed out, you're not going to see this coming. You're not going to see that coming. And it just makes everything better when everybody can just come together and be a team again and then lay out how we're going to go about fixing it.
Yeah. And you need to be able to plan everything out, because then if you're stressed trying to hit right at the deadline that, oh my gosh, we're behind on these loads, now we're trying to catch up, then there's going to be issues in other areas that you're not doing it the proper speed or the safest way, or you're trying to fit too many things in a tight spot. Like I find that a lot with my drillings. I try to tell people, here's the deadline. here's my deadline I'm setting. So then, like, I'm not stressed leading right up to it, because then what's not coordinated? What did I miss? Then I start having errors on my drawings that then is an issue on the job site. So it's like the trickle down effect that stress can have in managing at like all levels within the industry. Everybody needs to calm down.
Yeah, that's the other thing is I have, sometimes 20 truck and trailers, which without seeing the specific area, it doesn't sound like much, but it'll get very chaotic. And to be able to keep all of them in sync, and when one of them starts to wander off a little bit, getting him back in gear, you have to keep the structure and the harmony between everybody to make that place flow. Because if you get one grumpy driver, the whole day can take a huge turn. Yeah. So it's just having that. Like, a lot of the people that I've met, their way of keeping truck drivers in line is just yelling. It's just, why aren't you doing this? Why aren't you doing that? Versus just trying to tell everybody, this is the plan. This is how it's going to go. And let's have a great day. And then it's super weird how their attitudes just spark up. And, oh, good morning, Brenna. Have a good day, Brenna. See you in a couple hours, Brenna. What can I do, Brenna? Yeah. Is this okay over here, or do you want me to try to get it closer for you?
Last but not least, I want to introduce you to Emily Soloby. She was episode number 54, and she is on the, we'll say, fashion side of construction. So she started her own business to help with footwear in the hazard trades. So you can think of it as construction, you can think of it as trucking. There are so many different trades that are hazardous that we need to make sure we have the right footwear because of safety. For so long, the only safety boots were men's sizes, and they were either too big, too cumbersome. They'll never have extras on the job site. They'll never be ready to go free shoes set up whenever you join a trade association to handle that. So there's been so many different pop-up shops and distributors that now actually have female-focused PPE, and Emily Soloby is one of them. So we talk about how she transitioned into that side of the industry, because she more came from the trucking side, but how much having safe footwear that's also fashionable. I know I use some of their footwear whenever I'm on a job site to make sure I'm safe as an architect walking around, but I also don't feel like I'm in giant cumbersome boots if I am just doing a fit out project. I'll need those giant boots when it's a muddy job site outside on a rainy day. But if I'm jumping around from client meeting to job site, I can wear these shoes, make sure they are work appropriate. People know I'm going directly from job site to a meeting, but I can also be safe along the way. So hopefully you guys enjoy this clip and learning about Emily Soloby, and she was episode number 54. How do you launch a safety boot company?
Good question. Well, I didn't know, but I figured it out. So we decided to launch on Kickstarter. And Kickstarter, for those who don't know, is an online platform where you can basically introduce to the audience what the project is that you want to create. And then individuals can decide to back your project. And what that means with an actual physical product is that they're pre-ordering it, basically. So we put a video together. Well, we created our samples. We found our factory and we created our samples and had our design. And then once that was ready, we created a video explaining what it was we were doing. And then we really built a community around it before we launched. So that was the Hazard Girls community. And it was a Facebook group. It still is. It is a Facebook group. The podcast came out of that. But while we were waiting to launch, because COVID put us on a little bit of a delay. No, I take that back. COVID came a little later. But while we were waiting to launch, we were talking to everyone in our community to find out what it is they were looking for in safety boots and amping everybody up. And everyone was super excited. So when we finally did launch, it was February 11th, the International Day of Girls and Women in Science. And we funded within 29 hours.
That is awesome.
The whole thing funded. Yeah.
Now, did you start with just one shoe? Because I know you have a variety of shoes now. So was the discussion focused in and honing in to get the one product launch, or did you find you needed kind of a collection?
We really wanted to launch a collection, but financially, it was just not feasible. So we chose one style. And the way that we did that was, as I mentioned, talking to the women in the Facebook group about what they were looking for. We also put together all kinds of diagrams and images and sent those around in surveys to different groups. And we had them shared at workplaces and among our own networks, and really honed in on this style that people wanted the most and that was most missing from the marketplace. And that was the original Mendy boot that launched.
So it was the mini boot was the first one?
It's called the Mendy boot, and it's METI. And the reason we named it the Mendy boot is it's named after a building designed by Anna Herringer. She's a famous woman architect, and her building in Bangladesh is called the Mendy Handmade School. So the idea was for our line to each item in our line to be named after a building designed by a woman architect. So the first one was the Mendy boot.
Yeah, that's awesome. And how do you? I have so many questions. Like, how do you find? Because it's not just making shoes; there are different like safety levels and requirements. Yeah. So how did you find the proper partner to fabricate and start that process? I don't know if the Mendy boot had any ASTM certifications or anything when it first came out. Like, what was that process?
Everything was fully certified when it came out and when it launched. The process, well, I guess a lot of research on our part, understanding everything ourselves, and also hiring a consultant to work with who was an expert in this area. And then we work with a company that does all of the testing. And then our factory, we work very closely with our factory to make sure each item of the shoe and the shoe's construction would meet those standards. And our factory has the ability to test right on site so that they could tell if it was going to pass as they were making it. So that way, as you're constructing the shoe, you can be sure that it's going to meet impact and compression standards, puncture resistance, whatever that may be.
So how do they test it? Are they putting it on like robots to see if nails go through or things smash?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, just giant machines that do it.
And so I know you mentioned Hazard Girls group already and the podcast side. So where did the podcast arm come out of this with the group and creating the boots?
Well, as I mentioned, we started the Hazard Girls group before we launched the Kickstarter. So it really was at the very beginning. But the reason that we launched the Hazard Girls group, it really came out of a need because at the time, this is 2020, so over 4 years ago now. At the time, there really still wasn't a lot out there in terms of networking and organizations to connect women, because a lot of people because I was creating this boot company and people knew about it, a lot of people were coming to me and saying, I work in, heavy metals. I work in welding. I work in science, or whatever it may be. And but I'm isolated. I don't have any other women here. Do you have anyone you can connect me with? Do you know other women who are doing this? And that's why I really decided to create the group, because I thought, well, this is a perfect way to just connect people and also let them become aware of our brand. But so I always made it very clear from the get-go, Hazard Girls is a group organized by Juno Jones Safety Boots, but really we're here for you. Like, we want to be here so that we can connect you and help people get to know each other and realize that you're not alone.
Yeah, and cross industries, because it sounds like it's not just construction or transportation, but you got welders, fabricators, distributors, people on all different sides that sometimes I don't even think about, because, in my head, I think of the trades and my contractors that are females and jumping in there. And as an architect, I go on site every now and then, but I'm not there day to day. And just thinking how big that is when you simplify it to Hazard Girls, like that just creates such a good umbrella to grab everybody.
Yeah, I'm so glad you noticed that, because that's before I created the group, I did make sure there was nothing else out there first, because I'm like, I don't want to infiltrate someone else's already existing organization. I'll just send people there if need be. But I couldn't find anything else on Facebook as in a group. It was construction oriented or architecture oriented, or you name it. It was each individual. So yes, you're right. Bringing everything together under the umbrella was really the unique thing about Hazard Girls.
Yeah. And especially when there's only like one person. Like, I'm always excited when I see like a female electrician on site. I'm like, oh my gosh, like, what are you doing? How did you get certified? Like, I have so many questions. But I know when I started, I was the only female on site as an architect. And so I enjoy seeing how the females have grown in the industry into the trades and contracting and just showing you can do anything.
It's really changed. It's really improved so much just in the past half decade.
Yeah. So how have those conversations informed where Juno Jones has gone so far? Because now you have a lot of different options.
Yeah. I mean, we really follow what people are looking for. We're trying to meet our audience and meet the women in the field where they are and help to fulfill the needs that they're missing on the market. So our first style that we talked about, the Mendy boot, was aimed at being a stylish safety boot, because for me, that's what I was missing. And I think there's a lot of validity to having that, as I mentioned. But now that we're talking to so many more women and we see what else is missing out there in the market, we're hearing from women that they need, a lot of tradeswomen are looking for more options that actually fit their feet, that aren't pink it and shrink it, large male boots that don't fit them properly. And so that's really the direction we've tried to also go in, because we want to make sure women are safe. And when your only option out there as a tradeswoman are shoes that are made for men, your feet are going to have much higher likelihood of getting injured, or just your body in general. You may have the likelihood of tripping, of your foot slipping out. That can result in a lot of other types of injuries as well. So it's a safety issue. So we've really tried to include that direction in our line. And we have a sneaker as well, which is our Solstice sneaker, which was developed really for a lot of women working in warehousing and office as well, where you don't have to go out in the field that much, but maybe you want something a little lighter for the office, but that you can still know that your feet are protected when you do go out. So things like that. So we've tried to expand in that way.
Yeah. And I know I personally have the sneaker because I've done more recently a lot of interior renovations. So I get out of the exterior dirt a lot quicker. So I don't need my really heavy exterior boots that's going to have to deal with a lot of the muck, grime, and dirt, as well as all the nails. But wanted something, at least some protection as I go through, because you never know when somebody's going to drop a nail or something somewhere that I'm going to hit along the way for a floor that may look pretty well finished. Yeah. And I even wore that to the AIA conference, and it was able to go miles with me.
I love it. Yeah, they're so comfortable. I saw the picture of you at the AIA conference. I saw, and someone else brought them to Europe and did her Europe tour in them and was really comfortable. So it's good to know that people are wearing the heck out of them and getting them nice and used, and they're still really comfortable.
Yeah, and Europe would be great with all the cobblestones. You never know when you're going to just I always tend to trip on cracks and stumps on the floor. So it's just having a little bit more comfort is always helpful.
I live in Philadelphia, so I understand cobblestones pretty well.
Yeah. Do you have a favorite shoe?
It's hard. It's really hard for me because they're all my babies. My favorite is the Mendy 2, which we now call it the Mendy. But when we first launched the Mendy boot, it did not have a back pull tab. So our current Mendy boot has a back pull tab and also the zipper. There were a few changes made. So when we relaunched the Mendy boot with our new production run, we made a few changes that people had asked for in feedback. So now all of our boots have a back pull tabs to help you get them on. The zippers, if they have zippers, they go down low enough so they don't stop before, if you have a high arch, you can still get your foot in easily. So just things like that we made the difference. So the recrafted Mendy boot, which is the current Mendy boot, the one that a lot of people have, and it's still our bestseller, it's one of our 2 bestsellers. They're very close. Is still my favorite. I love it. It's so comfortable.
So what's the number 2 bestseller?
There's another boot we have that is competing for bestseller. I don't know exactly which one is the bestseller, to be honest, because they're so close, is the Lisa. And that is our sort of 90s combat boot style lace-up, 6-inch lace-up boot.
Gotcha. Was there anything surprising you learned along the way on what people wanted? It was, like a boot that like you never would have thought you would have gone that direction and ended up creating or something. And that wraps up the discussion focused on being a female-dominated industry. We took a little different looks at it from the architect standpoint, from Mendy, superintendent from Barb, the trades from Brenna, and being a supplier of PPE from Emily's side. And so making sure that you're keeping everybody safe on a job site, whether they're male, female, young, or old, whether it's PPE, psychological safety, and just being safe in general, so that we can create the amazing projects and work that we're putting together and being able to highlight all professionals. So hope you guys enjoyed this episode. I hope you enjoyed our discussion today. Learn some advice to take with you and see how our industry is all tied together to create the world around us. Check out the description below for any links or resources we discussed. If you liked the episode, please do me a favor and hit the subscribe button. Give me a thumbs up and leave a comment below. It really helps others be able to discover this resource and support finding that career path that best works for them. If you know someone that has inspired your own career that you'd like me to interview, let me know in the comments below, or you can reach out to me via my website or LinkedIn. I'd be happy to share their story or your own. Thank you again, and I cannot wait for the next career story I get to share with you next week.